This week, in Not That Kind of Gooner, Nani Madueke is announced officially as an Arsenal player. Liverpool threatened to get Isak. The Victor Gyökeres negotiations drag on, and Ethan Nwaneri extends his contract. Let's get into it.
Secret Gooner. All right, I'm a Gooner. Oh, I love you!
Saka! That is a goal! Nwaneri tries one!
Arsenal were going to wait another day to announce Victor Gyökeres, but then he was caught dancing with Mikel Arteta at a Coldplay concert, so the cat was out of the bag. This is Not That Kind of Gooner, an Arsenal podcast, and we're coming to you on Saturday. It's Saturday. Apologies for the week-long break. I've been out of town. Drew's been sick. John's been busy, but we're back, and we're back with a dear friend of mine as a guest. Someone who we've been in this situation together a few times, and looking forward to chatting Madueke and Gyökeres and Liverpool briefly threatening to ruin next season for all of us, as well as a couple other things. But to do that with me is a man that you all should hopefully know very well, which is Sash, who you can follow on Twitter at LTArsenal Sash. My friend, how have you been?
Wow, Sham, it was so nice to catch up with you just before we recorded this podcast. I think it's been almost a year since we did a podcast together, or since I did any podcast at all. As you know, I've not been super active on the socials, apart from on match day usually over the last year. But it feels really, really nice to be back chatting about Arsenal. I think I've really, really missed this one. So thank you so much for having me, and cannot wait to get this started.
Yeah, no, I'm it's good to have you on here. Honestly, it's great to be, kind of back behind the microphones with you again, chatting about the Arsenal, and looking forward to getting into it. Honestly, I wish I could take a healthier approach to social media like you do.
I'm trying. It's so hard, It's so hard. You see one thing about Gyökeres and you're scrolling for the next 3 hours. I was doing this whole week actually. So while I'm trying, it's really hard to be successful with it. But yeah, I think that's the love we have for Arsenal as well. And I think beyond a point, there's not too much we can do about it.
Yeah, no, I was grocery shopping with my wife yesterday, and I literally was pushing the cart while on Twitter and trying to scroll for news because I hadn't looked at my phone for the day. So I was trying to do all my news updates there, and I almost hit someone with the cart, and it was, I got yelled at. It was a thing. So yeah, no, I mean the social media addiction thing is real, and also it's that time of year where, you're chasing that transfer news dopamine, right?
Exactly.
So yeah. So no, I get it. But tell you what, let's jump into it and kind of talk about, well, first of all, why don't we do this? You've seen that we've signed Kepa, we've signed Zubimendi, and Madueke has been confirmed, and Norgaard's been confirmed. I think Hand of Arsenal just said that Christian Mosquera, despite the medical issue that he alluded to, that seems to be just about done. And then Gyökeres sounds like we're not too far away on. So just kind of, at the top here, before we kind of get into the specific news items, how are you feeling about the window as a whole? And, I guess kind of what score out of 10 would you give it right now?
So at the moment, I think I would give it a solid 8 out of 10, honestly. I don't know, to be honest, what fans were expecting at the start of the window. Were they expecting that we end up with Alexander Isak? I don't know what the fans were thinking of, a lot of them. But for me, I think what Arsenal needed was to really improve the squad as a whole, especially in the front line. I think there were times last season where you would have a player or two out injured, and then the guys replacing them were virtually guaranteed to start no matter what happened. I think that's not good in a high performance culture. And as well, some of these players, I don't think they were what we needed. For example, Merino up front, I think he did a decent job for us, but I don't think he is the guy that's going to get you over the line in a Premier League title race or in a UCL race, no matter the goals that he chipped in with, but still, I think we needed something more in some of these positions. So I'm very happy to see that Arsenal have addressed those with Madueke. I know we will get into it as we go on the pod, obviously, but I think he's a player that can bring quite a bit to us. I think I can boldly rest Saka in a Premier League match, even if it's like home to Brighton or a team like that. If he needs to be rested, I don't think we had this liberty last season. I think in Victor Gyökeres, you have a striker who can finish his dinner. Of course, people will say Portuguese league, this and that. And of course, the signing can always flop. But we're judging it as of today. We're not judging it 1 year from now. And as of today, that's a signing that makes a lot of sense. And of course, the same can also be said about some of the others that we're bringing in, like Martin Zubimendi, who I think is an upgrade on Thomas Partey. He's an upgrade on 2025 Thomas Partey at least. And to get Norgard in as a backup, a proven Premier League player, fantastic as well. And even at the back, Mosquera. Last season, there were times we had to play Kiwior as the right centre-back. And while he did fill in quite well, I think that's a far from ideal solution. So to really bolster the back line with a player like that, and also to get Kepa to deputize for Raya when needed, I think it's a really solid window. There's nothing overtly flashy about the window, but I think it's what we need. And I think it will become clear as the season progresses. But what do you think, Sham? How are you seeing it? I know we were chatting a few days back about Madueke. You seem a little less than impressed about that one. Have you changed?
Yeah. I'll get to my thoughts on Madueke in a second, but kind of, as a whole, right? I went into this window thinking maybe we're going to have 4 signings, right? Striker, winger, Zubimendi, and then maybe backup keeper, maybe, a backup defender, something like that. I wasn't expecting 6 or potentially even 7 signings, right? And I think right off the bat, that already tells me that, this is serious. This is a really serious window from, not only Andrea Berta, but from Arsenal. And yes, we're not getting the big, flashy, expensive signings like a Wirtz or an Isak, right? We're not, we're not like going after who I think people kind of refer to as like a top 3 option in the world in a position, right? But, well, first of all, I think Zubimendi could go on to be one of those things, but kind of, we have a finite transfer budget. And so while Liverpool can, spend like 70 million on fullbacks and then throw 125 million euros at Wirtz and then maybe try to throw another 100 or 120 at Isak, we have more needs than that. So, I think kind of the savviness with which we've acquired like Kepa and Mosquera and Norgard for, I think like a total of 30 million euros for those guys, right? That's really impressive to me. Zubimendi, I think, is going to change how quickly we progress the ball up the pitch. And, we're going to get two players who, if nothing else, will offer power and will offer pace in behind and will offer directness, right? Which is something, those are all things that we've really lacked. And if we do go get like an Eze or a Rodrigo on top of that, I think that's almost a perfect window, to be honest, as long as, maybe we make a few sales as well and get some players that we're not going to use out the door. So yeah, no, I'm really happy with what we've done. And also, even with what we have done, again, even while trying to sign players within a budget, we still have, if we sign Gyökeres officially, we'll still have 3 of the top 10 most expensive signings of the window between Zubimendi and Gyökeres and Madueke, right? So those are still 3 big money signings. So yeah, I think I'm with you right now. I think I'd give it an 8. If we go sign that left winger, I think that turns into a 10. And then in terms of Madueke, right, we can kind of transition onto that, where like when we first got linked to Madueke, yeah, I was very apprehensive, right? because it wasn't so much a Chelsea player thing, right? I think people see us buying from Chelsea and they immediately get upset, and kind of with part of that I empathize, where it's like, right, we're going to the same place and buying players. It feels a little lazy when there's a whole world out there to sign players from. But Chelsea are hoarding some of the best young talents in the world. And if you want to go get those young talents, they there's a good chance they have them, right? And then secondly, I just think the way that people have like overreacted and like kind of the just the behavior that people really showed towards Madueke signing, I think almost pushed me towards more approval of it. You know what I mean? Seeing people DM him and tell him not to come and create petitions and deface murals asking for Arteta to leave. I just think all that was really pathetic, honestly, in response to the Madueke thing. And when you dig into the numbers and you go back and watch the tape, yes, there are, if you are looking for things to be concerned about, I think you can find them in there. But he's one of the most progressive carriers on the continent, not just in the Premier League, right? He's a very direct player. He's fast. He's 6 feet tall, which is amazing for a winger, right? And he, I do like his mentality where, he said in his interview when he got announced that he's always looking to kind of get square with his defender and beat them, right? And I think that's something we've been missing on the left-hand side. I think Trossard isn't a player who has the physical attributes needed to get past his man on a regular basis, and Martinelli, seems to kind of have developed a habit of running himself into corners and not taking on his man as often as you'd want him to. So, yeah, no, I'm really high on the Madueke signing now. Once I've kind of gone back and looked at the player and kind of forgotten the name, forgotten the club he's at. So, I guess the question I would pose to people is, if you forget those things, the name of the club, and just think to yourself, you're paying $52 million for a guy who's going to come in and be a good backup to Bukayo Saka, right? If Saka ever needs to sit down for a match or two, I think Madueke can fill in very well, and Madueke can also play on the left-hand side quite well. He doesn't really seem to mind which flank he's deployed on, which is good. And this is a guy with the capability of, really becoming one of the best wingers in the world. And I know people will, again, kind of scoff at that, but I think the numbers all indicate that's the case. He's only 23. Mikel Arteta is kind of the guy who Raheem Sterling and Leroy Sané have credited with their development into being the elite talents that they were not too long ago, right? So I think if you told me we could have that for 52 million, I think that honestly is a bit of a bargain, and Arteta and Berta certainly seem to think so. But I know you were initially much higher in the Madueke signing than I was. So how are you feeling about it?
Yeah, I think right from the moment he was linked, I was happy with that one, and I can also tell you why it's not an overpay. You need to see how much other wingers are going for. You have someone like Anthony Elanga, who I've rated always, by the way. I used to defend this guy when he was at United, and all of their fans used to slander him. I said, no, Elanga is actually a really good young player. Back the guy. He could be a good squad player for you guys. They, of course, didn't. They went on to some other shiny toys that didn't work out. And Elanga ends up going, of course, to Forest, where he does a really good job, gets, I think, the leading assists or something in the last couple of seasons or something close to that. And then he gets his move to Newcastle for 55 million. And that's just how much you have to pay for a young young English winger who's coming up, who's done it in the Premier League. This is the going rate for a player like that. Manchester City paid 65 million for Doku, right? Or 60 million for Doku. I think Doku's a good player. I don't think he's a world beater, but he's a good player. This is just how much you pay. United paid 90-something million for Anthony. Wingers, first of all, in this market, there are not too many top ones out there, And I think Arteta also looks for pretty specific requirements with the wingers. I think one of the things he looks at is that they have to be able to track back and work hard, press. I think this is really important for him. If you don't do this, you're totally disqualified. And I think that's also the reason why we haven't gone for someone like Rafael Leao, for example, yet, because off the ball, he does not really do the job that Arteta is looking for. And I remember this very well because in Arteta's final game at Manchester City, when he was the assistant, Kevin De Bruyne was doing a press conference post the game, and he was speaking about how they pressed Arsenal. So City beat us 3-0 at the Emirates, and De Bruyne mentioned that Arteta had identified before the game that in Arsenal's front three, which at the time was Martinelli, Aubameyang, Pepe, and with I think Ozil behind them, he mentioned that Martinelli was the only guy who was pressing, you know. And if you look at what happened to Aubameyang, of course, there's more disciplinary issues there, but also what happened to Pepe. There's a reason why some of these players didn't make it with Arteta, and same with Ozil as well. Of course, he was on his last legs back then, but he could not do the pressing that was required. So people will mock Arteta for it. People will say that he's the enemy of flair. He cannot tolerate a player who does a few tricks here and there. I think he can, but that player has to be unbelievably good for them to be excused from not doing it. You know, someone like if it was Messi or someone like that, you don't have to make him press. But when you're not on that level and when you're just a very good player, it's not sufficient. So I think Madueke, amazing work rate on the ball, off the ball, and on the ball as well. He's very intense with the way he moves with the ball. I think he's different from Pepe. I didn't see Pepe getting past 6 players ever at Arsenal. I think he would trip past 1 or 2, cut in and shoot. I think
Lord knows he tried,
shown,
though.
He tried. You can't fault the man for trying. But unfortunately, you have to pull it off as well. That's just the name of the game. So Madueke, though, was able to do it. And I think in many occasions, especially against Arsenal, he really cooked. Every time I watched Chelsea play, I was like, wow, Madueke looks really good. And I can understand why people can say he's frustrating. But it's more down to how he is in the final third sometimes. Maybe the shooting is not always perfect. But I think there's still a lot to work with that. I don't know too many wingers who are left-footed playing on the right wing who are as good with the right foot as Madueke. Probably I can only think of Saka, you know, who's so good with his right foot. So there's a lot to work with that. And I think as you mentioned as well, Saka has not been given a rest for the last 5 years, pretty much, you know. You could never rest him because every game you would need him there. If he was not there, you had Sterling, who was not reliable at all. And in the seasons before that, we didn't have anyone. We had Reece Nelson, who I don't think was good enough to be a starting right winger in the Premier League, you know. So I think it was always far from ideal. And I think this has been a hole in Arsenal squad for quite a while. We tried signing Rafinha as well in the past. There's quite a few white players we have tried to sign. Didn't happen. This time we have managed to make it happen. And I think 50 million is very, very fair. You know, he's been at Chelsea for 2 years. I think the fact that he's at Chelsea is also an important factor. He's played at a top club in England. They're our rivals. They finished like a point or two behind us last season. So obviously there could be a markup on the price. But when you look at all the other deals going on in the market, 50 million is not so much. And I just want to say one thing as well, which is that if we want to be a big club, we can't nitpick every single signing, you know. You saw what Man City did. They put 100 million on Grealish. It worked quite well to some extent, but after a while it stopped working. They put the money on Doku. Then they realized, no, Doku, he's a bit indecisive in the final third. Let's get Marmoush in. That's how a big club moves. They don't dwell on, 50 million didn't work. I think I'm happy that Arsenal even went for it because it's a very un-Arsenal-like move to pay 50 million for a player who's just going to be in the squad. So I'm very happy with this signing. I could not have asked for someone better who can be a backup to Saka in this market. I just didn't see anyone out there. I don't know if you had any other names in mind, but I think this was a good coup.
No one is proven as Madueke is. You know, like Bakayoko was someone I wondered about, or you know, I did like Alanga actually. But yeah, I mean, there's Madueke.
But he's 55 million as well, right? Alanga. He's also going for the same price range. There's no like clear bargain deal who you can sign for 25, 30 million and say, this is the guy. I don't know who that player was. And maybe I'm not a great scout of players, but yeah.
I saw someone even bring up Yeremy Pino from Villarreal, and it's like, Is that really the guy? I've seen. I think that point you made at the end, as well as the other points, but I especially love the point that you made at the end about how people really nitpick signings and really kind of focus in on or really just are so precious about when we spend like 50 plus million on a player, right? Like you still see it with Havertz. Every time Havertz has a bad game, people are like, oh, 65 million. We spent 65 million on Havertz. The project's over because of that. That's the signing that ruined the Arteta era. Oh, worst signing. I still see people say that the Havertz is the worst signing that we've ever made. The worst? Really? What about Pepe? What about Amari Bischoff? What about Yaya Sanogo? What about Gervinho? Those guys sucked. Those guys were terrible. I was there for that. The Amari Bischoff played one game. It was like a few minutes, was horrific, and Arsene Wenger never wanted to talk about him again. That's how bad that signing was. In the meantime, Kai Havertz has come in, and he scored 38 goals and assists in 18 months, right? And he's been a key player for us. He runs his ass off every single match week to the point where he blew out his hamstring. That guy, you could have forgiven Havertz for taking a few weeks off in terms of, the off the ball work just to preserve himself. But he ran and ran and ran until one day, his body couldn't do it anymore.
And let me just ask you one question also with the Havertz signing. Okay. So 65 million, we bought him, I think a couple of years ago. So 2023, we bought him. At the time, if we were looking for a striker, who would you have paid 65 million for? Who would be a clear-cut upgrade on Havertz? Like even when we were speaking about Madueke, you mentioned Pino, and I think maybe potentially, but at most it's debatable one, right? It's not like a clear cut to say that this guy was there, we didn't do it. Who was there 2 years ago that could have done better than Havertz definitively for Arsenal up front? I'm really trying to think. I can't really think of someone,
People will say Osimhen. I disagree with that. I like Osimhen. I think he's a good player, but he seems to be blacklisted by clubs for a reason. There's no big clubs going in for him, which is why he's in Turkey right now. Who else? Vlahovic has fallen off, I think.
Yeah.
Who I'm trying to think of others who were available at that time.
The clear-cut upgrade, someone like an Isak is going to be 130, 140 million,
easily.
And they're not going to, they're not so easy to just get like that. We already spent 100 million that season on Rice. So I think 65 million for Havertz was totally fine and justified signing. He might not be the world beater, but I think this is the market, man. Like Nunes is going for 75 million. Like we have to just keep it moving. Like Julian Alvarez, good player, don't get me wrong, going for like 80 million. Is he definitively better than Havertz up front? I don't think so, honestly. Like you look at even his goal scoring at Atletico, it's decent, but it's a worse league than the Premier League. And Havertz is, as you said, scored a lot of GA. So people, I think they should have a bit more perspective. We can't just sign Harry Kane or Isak if they are not available.
And I would go so far as to say that in 2024, right, for the entire calendar year of 2024, Havertz was maybe a top 15 striker in the world based on how he played. Because I've gone back and I've watched those goals and assists, and he looked excellent in that position. So I don't understand kind of like the obsession with 65 million with him, and I'm worried that people are going to do this with Madueke too if he has bad games. And it is what it is, right? But I think he's a good signing. I've really warmed up to it, and he seems also like a good guy, and like is going to be like a good presence to have in that locker room, right? Contrary to what people may think about the fact that he wears a do-rag or a couple dumb things that he's posted to his Instagram.
Some of that stuff is crazy because this guy is one of the nicest people to work with, and his ex-coaches have all said such positive things about him, his mentality, how hard he is working every day. It's insane to me that people would judge him based on what he wears or like how he dresses himself and assumes that he has a bad attitude. It's insane to me, and there's a lot of racial undertones here, which is really disgusting to see.
Yeah, the guy literally was talking about how he was excited about the move partially because he could go see his parents after every game. Like,
It's beautiful, isn't it? He lives with his parents actually, even now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, the guy could live in a penthouse in London if he wanted to. But yeah. So just, really, really humble guy. And, I think he'll be very versatile for us. And yeah, I think he'll justify the price tag, honestly. So I'm excited about that.
I'm rooting for him.
Yeah.
I really would like to see some people getting proven wrong. And as you said, some of the over-the-top reactions. I mean, I expect it, with social media, there's always a group of people who are jumping. And I think when you spend 12 hours a day on social media, this is what happens. And I see a lot of people like this on Twitter as well, waiting for the next update, the next update, the next update. And then they're saying, oh, Gyökeres, we're in talks. We're in talks. It's not collapse. So people need to take a chill. And they see all of this and they're like, oh, suddenly Madueke comes in. Oh, what is the club doing? The worst thing you can do is act on information from unreliable outlets and make conclusions on what you think is happening, which is usually very far from the truth, So I've had the privilege to get to know some people in football who are well connected and who are able to give me some good updates from time to time. What I can tell you is that sometimes there's a total mismatch between what is being reported by some outlets, not all, versus what is actually happening. And you saw it with this Ethan Nwaneri extension as well, where I don't want to get into it too much, but there were some journalists who mentioned that he wanted game time and stuff like this. And then people were like, Arteta, you should have played him last season. How could you not give the kid time? Blah, blah, blah. And then once the truth comes out, it's from Ornstein, who I trust more than anybody else.
Yeah.
There were no such demands, and everyone had created such a huge meltdown and scene for absolutely no reason. And this happens way more often than we think. So just like an example. Yeah.
I think, and you and I have talked about this a couple times before. I just wish the way I try to think about things, right, is I don't look at something that Arsenal do or Arteta does and try to like construct a story in my head as to why he did it, right? Yeah. I try to look and I try to think, what is the best reason for them to decide to do that, right? And, that leads to me not saying shit like, Arteta got upset that Nwaneri was doing so well because he hates the youth and he wanted to put him on ice. No, that leads me to making conclusions along the lines of maybe he needed a rest physically. Maybe we saw that he was struggling to kind of keep up the intensity in recent matches and we put him on the bench, right? And
he had an injury as well.
Yeah, and he had an injury. That's the thing. Like we started playing him and he got hurt and then we had to wait for him to come back. And then we gave him over 1,000 minutes last season. And he's 18. And, some people might say, look at Miles Lewis-Skelly. Clearly, Lewis-Skelly has developed differently physically as a player. And that doesn't mean Nwaneri won't reach that level, but it just means it's going to be on a different timeline, which is fine.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right? Yeah, tell you what, while we're talking about Nwaneri, I mean, just, so obviously his extension has been reported as being completed, right? And where do you see Nwaneri playing in this coming season, right? Because we have Madueke coming in now, who presumably is the number 2 option at right wing, and we have Martinelli and Trossard currently at left wing. We have Madueke, who can play left wing as well. We might go for Eze or Rodrigo or someone like that. So what do you think that means for Nwaneri?
I think he's going to be the understudy to Odegaard. I think Arsenal promised him a central role while giving the extension, which I think is his best position. I think he's so good in those pockets of space, receiving, giving assists, scoring goals, but also giving a lot for us in build-up, dropping really deep as well, and not just standing next to the striker. So I think he's a complete all-round midfield player. and we've barely scratched the surface of his potential, which is very scary considering what he produced last season for a 17-year-old, which was insane. Some of the goals he scored, whether it was Premier League or even in Champions League when he got the chances, cup competitions, he showed to me that he's probably the player at Arsenal with the highest potential out of everyone. And I'm Martin Odegaard's big fan. I defended him so much last season, but amidst all the slander, and I really back Odegaard to come good this season again because he was our player of the season for 2 seasons and then had one off season where he also had injuries for a few months. I think Odegaard is very good, but I think a day will come where Ethan Nwaneri is going to replace him in the starting 11 because I think Ethan is a potential world beater. So I think the very fact that all these top clubs were in for him, even a team like Dortmund that knows a superstar when they see one, I think that tells you the pedigree of this player. And the fact that he's an Arsenal boy who wants to stay, who wants to make it at the club, it's really good news for the club because you need guys from the academy who know what it is to play for Arsenal, who've been fans of Arsenal, some of them through the banter era. I think they are more driven than any player in the world to make Arsenal like a force again. So it's not just the drive, but it's also the ability this kid has. It's incredible. I see him one day even as a guy who can get like 15 goals, 14 assists. I think he's going to one day be one of the best players in the league, and it's just a matter of when and not how. And as you said, I think everyone has a different timeline. So let's see when Ethan's timeline is. But I think right from the start, he can add so much value in the squad, in cup competitions, even in the Premier League. If we have to rest Odegaard, I really trust him to come in and do the job. I think he's shown last season. It's not like last season he was playing every game, but when he gets that one chance, he would come in and do something. Like what he did against City, that last 15 minutes, come in, make a difference, score that goal. I think to do that against Man City is a big thing. I think it's a big moment which showed to the world that, hey, this is who I am. I don't care who the opposition is. I'm going to do my thing. And I'm super excited with this guy. I think people are out here saying Eze, Xavi Simons, fair enough. I think, first of all, these guys are coming to play out wide. But I don't think these guys are anywhere near Nwaneri's level down the middle. I think Ethan is top. And we sometimes have to appreciate what we have rather than always look outside and be like, I want this, I want that. We actually have a very special player here.
Yeah, and I think this might have been one of the most important pieces of business we did this summer, right? Because as much as we need some external reinforcements to, challenge for the Premier League and the Champions League and everything that we want to win, I think, in Nwaneri and Lewis Skelly, and soon we'll see Max Dowman as well. In those three, I think you have potentially elite talents who are coming through who can kind of serve as replacements for, guys like Odegaard and Rice and, and maybe, I don't want to say Saka, but, Saka played like a central position or something, but these guys can come in and be the core of a team that continues to challenge, half a decade down the line from now. Right. And so I'm glad that we've tied Nwaneri down. It sounds like he wanted to stay. It sounds like he trusts our development of him, which, is great to hear considering what that situation was just a couple of years ago. But yeah, it's why I get annoyed when people freak out about giving Nwaneri kind of this pathway, right? Lewis Skelly didn't really have a pathway into the first team last season. He had to beat out Calafiori and Kivior and Zinchenko and Tierney to play left back.
That's
and he
insane.
did that. Yeah. He had to beat out 4 established players to take the left back position, and he did. And he held it down the entire season, right? So Nwaneri kind of has to show that he can do the same if he wants to take the kind of the right 8 position from Odegaard now. But on top of that, people were worried about Madueke taking minutes from him. Nwaneri's not a wide player. He's just not. And I think he did okay in that position last season, but even then he showed, this he showed that he really wanted to just keep cutting into the right half space, which I understand. That's where he's at his best. But, I just don't think he has the physical traits to succeed out there at this point in time. But yeah, I'm not worried about Odegaard, or sorry, I'm not worried about like Nwaneri's game time or, you know, kind of his development with us, right? Because I think Arteta really specializes in developing players, first of all. And second, I think you have a natural bridge into Nwaneri taking over as the starter in Odegaard's spot, because Odegaard this season will turn 27. So what that means is eventually you're going to hit a point in Odegaard's late 20s where you're going to phase him out, and Nwaneri, it's very easy to imagine he will be good enough to kind of phase in and take over that spot. And that's your succession plan solid. And I'm sure that's how Arsenal put it to Nwaneri at some point during these negotiations and told them, just keep working hard, just keep working on your development and, physically and as a player. And you'll see that there's kind of a natural succession plan already, set up for you. So I'm really excited to tie him down. And, kind of, I keep thinking back to the Madueke thing too, because, I feel like I've learned a lesson this summer, which is don't react too much when you initially see who the club are going after, and instead try to figure out what makes them interesting. And another player who taught me that lesson this summer is Victor Gyökeres, right? And, looked like things had accelerated with him about a week ago, and now it's quieted down. It sounds like we're still haggling with Sporting. So, Sash, I just want your thoughts on this. Is the Gyökeres deal completely dead in the water, and are we just not going to sign a striker this summer? And are we just stuck with Havertz again as our striker for the next 12 months?
No, I think it will get sorted in the next couple of days to 3 days. I think it will be done. I think it's the last part of that deal, and they're all haggling over that last 1 or 2 million euros. I think at some point either party will end up compromising. It's too close for it, I think, not to happen. I think the player has told that Arsenal is my preference. I think Arsenal have said Gyökeres is our preference. Sporting also know that the player has gone on strike basically and totally refused, to play. I would not be happy if an Arsenal player did that, but it's very funny seeing the Sporting president come out and have a rant about it. It's quite funny to see it from our side. But I think if you look at it, Sporting have a history of doing this. I think there's a very long list of players they have where the president has come and said, this guy is not for sale, or where he's staying or something like this, and he's gone in a couple of days. You can't take their words too seriously. It's also quite clear that the reporting from Portugal is coming from their side, where they're like, oh, there's still some way to go. Whereas from England, it's more positive that, it's the final bits of the deal being ironed out, and Arsenal are optimistic. So I think this is another one where you just have to give it a bit of time. I think it seems like a lot of time, again, when people are on social media the whole day, it's like, oh, why hasn't this moved yet? But if you just take a step back, it's like, okay, it was just 10 days or 12 days ago that Arsenal decided that we're going to go for Gyökeres instead of Sesko, who we were initially going for. We've already made good progress on the Gyökeres deal to the point where it's pretty much in its final details. I would just say, let it play out. Give it a few more days, This is not like some of the deals in the past, like a Higuain or something where we were bidding totally far off from what the asking club were like demanding. I think this one is really, really close. And I think it's just a case of a few days before it will be confirmed. So as Hand of Arsenal also said, he made this really amazing reply to someone, and he said that this one is done and some of us have already started working on the next file. So I would trust him. I think he's a top guy. He's been absolutely spot on throughout this window and also in the past. So if he says it's done and he's that confident, I would definitely trust him. And similar messaging from Ornstein as well, that it's pretty much that.
Yeah, I on Hand of Arsenal, right? I've had the privilege of speaking to him a couple times, and he is a guy who really takes seriously, getting it right and not lying to people. And I know there's countless ITKs out there that just say whatever they think is going to get them attention on a given day, and they don't do their due diligence. They don't, kind of get multiple sources for things to kind of make sure what they're saying is right. They just fire from the hip. What I really respect about Hand of Arsenal is that he really, he really makes sure that he knows what he's talking about before he talks about it. So, and he really takes that responsibility seriously. So, I mean, I don't even think about him as an ITK anymore. He's a reporter, basically, in my eyes, or a journalist. So,
yeah, he's a top person, very ethical, as you said, with the way he puts stuff out. So I really like that. I think it's so refreshing. I think since the days of AFC Bell, we have not had someone who goes into this level of detail. So kudos to him for the work that he does tirelessly day in, day out. I think it's so hard to get information, and I know the level of effort that he puts in to get the information as well. It's super admirable, I would say.
Yeah. So shout out to Hand of Arsenal. With regards to the Gyökeres thing and kind of the negotiations not being over yet, I guess I would just say, right, people want us to wrap up the deal quickly, and I understand that, especially with the plane leaving for the preseason tour in Asia momentarily, basically. But I think if you cave to Sporting, at least instantly, right, where they do this thing about, we want the add-ons more guaranteed, or we want 10 million worth of add-ons in this category, and you want to split it up a little bit more. If you cave on that gets you Gyökeres quicker right now, but it also costs you in the long run, right? Because that sends the message to clubs where they're given the impression they can go in and they can just kind of drag their heels a little bit, and you're going to give them what they want. So I think it is beneficial for Arsenal just to really make sure they get the best deal possible. And yeah, they'll probably have to concede on a couple things, but I'd rather they stay diligent and disciplined about that, as opposed to, pulling a Manchester United and just saying, oh, okay, here's 100 million euros. Just give us the player. So yeah, but I guess, so how do you feel about Gyökeres the player, right? Because I can tell you initially I was a big Šeško fan, right? And I was a little disappointed to hear that we turned to Gyökeres. Although once I heard that RB Leipzig wanted 90 million euros for Šeško, I think that made things a little easier for me. But yeah, how do you rate Gyökeres, and what do you think? Do you think he'll be a success at Arsenal?
Yeah, I do think he will be a big success. I think he will get us 20 goals in the league. I genuinely believe that, of course, including penalties as well, like 20, 22 goals in a season. I think there's a lot of things he can bring to Arsenal. I think the first is his mentality to score. I think Arsenal historically, and to some extent even now, has been a team that try to walk the ball into the net sometimes. I think he's a guy that if he sees that space to shoot, he's going to go boom, Yeah. There's not going to be this overplaying. He's just going to go. He's very direct. So I think that's something a little different to what we have. So already that's a really good thing. I would personally say that at centre forward, I see him as an upgrade on Kai Havertz. I know we spoke about how good Kai Havertz is, but I think Gyökeres has more to his game for a centre forward than Havertz does. People say that Havertz is a better header of the ball than Gyökeres. I'm not so sure, because the stats say that Gyökeres actually won a higher percentage of his aerial duels than Havertz did. I know it's the worst league, and that's what people will say, but he can't be worse than Havertz if he has significantly better numbers in that regard. So I think there are things that he does better than Havertz, like finishing. I think he's more like quicker with his runs and his running than Havertz. I would rate him as a better dribbler than Kai Havertz. It's important to remember that Gyökeres actually started his career as a left forward before making that transition to centre forward when he was playing for that Swedish second division side. And he's been all over the place. So he's come from that. He's come to Brighton, and he's been on loan all over the place. He went on loan to a second division side in the Bundesliga, I believe. He also played in the Championship.
Like St. Pauli or something?
St. Pauli, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think the team based in Hamburg, that was the one, yeah. So he was playing for them, and then he went to Coventry. That's where he really made a name for himself when started to bang in the goals, which is a big deal to do in the Championship. And for Sporting to pay 20 million euro, which is a big move for Sporting, I think it tells you that they saw massive potential in this guy and knew that inevitably they were going to get their money back twice or thrice more than what they pay. And I think he's shown it for Sporting that he's a proper goal scorer. People will say Portuguese league, but please go see what he did in the Champions League. Please go see what he did in Sweden. Honestly, from a striker, I think this guy ticks every single box. If people are going to start nitpicking about his weaknesses, people will say heading inside the box. It may not be his biggest strength, but it's not a weakness. I think there's a lot to work with over that. And people saying that, he scores only in transitions. Go watch that comp for 5 minutes where he scored goals from settled play. And it's not like we're not going to have transitions at Arsenal. Like, I don't know if some of these people even watched Arsenal playing, because we press so high up the pitch, we win the ball high, and we want to get the players in. And I think Victor Gyökeres will fit in perfectly there. And the fact that he's a right footer as well is a good thing, because he will drift towards the left. He will rotate with Martinelli. He will give us so much, I think. And I think for 60 million, it's absolute no-brainer, And yeah, I'm actually very gassed. I think it's the deal which I'm most excited about, because apart from Saka and Martinelli, who I believe in a lot, I know not everyone believes in him anymore. But I see Saka, Martinelli as guys that can get 15 goals from open play. But apart from this, I see Gyökeres is the guy who can get 20. And from our starting choice front three, if we can get 50 plus goals, I think that's really good. And then you get the other guys like Madueke, Havertz, and whoever we sign on the left, also chipping in with 20, 30 goals. It's, I think, looking quite good for us.
Yeah, I think so. The point about transitions is funny, right? Because the Premier League is becoming a really transition heavy league, right? And I think that's a big reason why Liverpool were as successful as they were last season. But on top of that, in terms of winning the ball high up, we forced the most turnovers in the opponent's third, I think, last season. If not the most, definitely very, very high up that list. And we still were one of the worst teams in transition. And we still had one of the lowest goals from forced turnovers in the league, which shows you that we're really good at winning the ball. But once we do, we have no idea what to do with it. And I think of so many moments where we've won the ball in really advantageous situations for ourselves, and we just screwed it, right? Whether it's a player making the wrong choice on the ball or dallying when they should have shot. I still think of, I think it was at Anfield this season when we won the ball in Liverpool's penalty box, and then it was Marino and Partey. And they just didn't know what to do. And they were inside the penalty area, and Partey basically sat there and waited for Marino to come to the ball. And at that point, Liverpool had regrouped them, the chances a lot, So
yeah,
I think having a guy like Gyökeres in those situations will be really, really helpful for us, especially because Gyökeres is a guy who's just going to put his foot through the ball as soon as he has the opportunity to, which is one of the ways that you destabilize low blocks. If you just keep shooting and you create these chaotic moments, that's how you're able to score against them. So, I think he has
He's
a lot to offer.
It's a bit like pre-injury Podolski, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, that's a really good comparison. Probably with a little bit more pace and power, but yeah, he does. That's a really good comparison, actually. He's just a really direct guy who is desperate to score. And I love the mentality, honestly. Once it kind of became known that we were going after Gyökeres, you look at how much this guy backs himself, and kind of the ferocity he plays with, and I just I fail to see how this is going to be a flop of a signing. There's always a chance that it could be, but I just think he's going to come in and he's going to be desperate to make a really big first impression. And he's going to add that willingness just to put the ball on target. And I think we've had a lot of shot shy moments in the last couple of years. So I'm just excited to finally have a genuine number 9 at the club, because I think it's been too long.
Yeah, and I also want to just add one more thing. You made some really good points there. Also, the game that he played against us in the Champions League, right? People said he was poor that day. People said that Saliba and Gabriel bullied him. But if you actually go watch the replay, I think he did really well. I think better than what most centre forwards would do against Saliba and Gabriel. The way he used his body, especially against Saliba, getting away from him, getting a shot with his weaker left foot, amazing shot which smashed the crossbar. I think that just gave you a glimpse of him as a player, physically bullying a defender, running forward with the ball, smashing it. And even the way he played against City was amazing. I think his first goal, the way he took that was really, really good. And I think, as you mentioned, teams are going to be a bit scared to play very high against Arsenal, because now there's a threat in behind. And if you see the way PSG played, they were happy to come. They were like, okay, let the centre forward touch the ball. He's not going to harm us. But if they give that space to Gyökeres, it's going to be different. I think even to Kai Havertz, who still, I think, has a tendency to more come, drop deeper, and not always so hungry to get behind and take the goal. So I think Gyökeres offers these things. And also on the other side, maybe it also brings out another version of Kai Havertz, because it's good that he also has good competition now. He did not have much of it in the last seasons, partly with Gabriel Jesus, who actually displaced him from the 11 for a brief while before getting injured. But I think now the competition is going to be crazy for us. Yeah.
Yeah. And, that's the thing, right? Where I still think Havertz is great, and I think he'll play a lot of minutes this coming season. But I was watching this Adam Clary video kind of talking about what Gyökeres is going to bring to Arsenal. And there's this one moment he's talking about, I forget which team it was against, but Saka has the ball. He's one-on-one with the right back or with the left back. And there's this huge space right just past the...
Oh, yes.
Sorry?
I remember this one. I remember seeing the same clip. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And there's that huge space just past the right half space. And he was talking about how Gyökeres would run into that space and get, Saka would give him the ball, and either Gyökeres would take the shot or cut back or something. And Havertz stayed back towards the back post and really just kind of stood among multiple center backs and just left Saka to deal with the defender one-on-one, which, that's fine sometimes, right? Because Saka's great. He'll get past his man, but I just think a lot of our attacking play has really turned into, it's like that Will Ferrell movie, Kicking and Screaming, where he tells his team, give the ball to the Italians. I feel like our front four, front five is give the ball to Saka, and then we'll just be here. So, I'm looking forward to just kind of seeing again that drive to really unsettle defenses and really get at them, running behind, create those spaces, create those shooting opportunities. Those don't lead to bad things typically. So I'm really thrilled about that. And I'm also really excited kind of just because the direction that all these signings indicate we're heading in, right? Where you see primarily, I'm thinking about Zubimendi and Gyökeres and Madueke, where, you have a guy in midfield who's passing after one or two touches, right? Very nice and crisp, doesn't dally on the ball, and, is good at punching it through the lines. And then up front, you're getting a guy who, again, like we said, loves to run at defenders, loves to run in behind, uses his body, will shoot on sight, almost every chance he gets. And then you have a winger who can play on each side, is, again, a 99th percentile progressive carrier, right? Also likes to shoot, also generates a lot of XA and XG, and, also has the pace and the strength to, handle defenders and run in behind and, kind of offer those passes to playmakers like Odegaard and Nwaneri and Saka and, anyone else who might bring in who can do that. So that all tells me that this coming season, Arteta wants to play a lot more directly, right? And we're not going to do this horseshoe of death and we're going to pass around the opposing penalty area. We're not going to slowly progress the ball at the pitch. We are going to go right at teams now. right? And we're going to punch those balls over the top, or through the defenses for players to run onto. We're really going to stretch teams now, and we're going to take as many shots as we can because we have guys like Gyökeres and even Havertz. Honestly, I am excited about the prospect of playing Havertz as a second striker now, because we forget Havertz is still a guy who is amazing at knowing where to be, kind of in the penalty area. So I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities for Havertz if he plays alongside Gyökeres, where Gyökeres or Madueke or Saka takes a shot, and then the goalkeeper parries it or it deflects, and Havertz is there to kind of just tidy things up, put the ball in the back net. So it's
the question I have for you, Dad, though, is how would you fit that though? Because who do you play Havertz instead of, if you're going to play both Gyökeres and Havertz together?
I think what you would do is you would play one of Rice or Zubimendi at 6, and then you would play Havertz like at left 8, basically. And then, after that, you could have Lewis Skelly tuck into midfield and maybe function as a guy who fills in that left 8 spot. But,
it's quite an interesting one. Yeah, it's quite an interesting one, especially when we're chasing a game or something. And if you want that extra body, right, it could do it. I think that's a great point. That's what
it's definitely not going to be the default for how we play, but kind of that's the other thing, right? Where we're going to have players we can turn to if we need a goal, if we need to kind of get back into a game. So it's just, for me, it's just all about options, right? It's all about having different ways of being able to play. And I think, over the last year or so, we've gotten a little bit predictable. And that's not all down to Arsenal. We've also gotten very unlucky with injuries and stuff, and that's limited our choices. But I think generally we've kind of lacked a plan B offensively. And I'm looking forward to having, plan B and a plan C. So do you see that the same way?
Yeah, I'm really happy with that. I think, though, one thing we have to speak about is Arteta needing to manage the squad as well better than how he has done in the past seasons. At times, I think he could have been more proactive with substitutions, done more to change how we are approaching the game as well when we're chasing it. That's something I'm intrigued to see. But I would hope that now that he has his players in, that he trusts fully, that he will get better at it. And I hope he did have the chance to reflect a bit more, in the holiday season as to how to manage the minutes of the players, to distribute them properly. I think he improved a bit last season at it, but still, I think there's scope to be better. The way Pep was doing it at City when he got the 100 points, he used to rotate the team almost every week. When you were playing Fantasy Premier League, it was a nightmare to try and select Man City players. But that's how it should be. If you want to be competitive in multiple competitions, you need to make sure your players are well rested. And I was actually speaking to Wayne, who you might know from Twitter. Was it Wayne? Might have been someone else. I think they made the point that PSG, all of the players who played well in the Champions League, they only played like 22 league games at most. They were rested for almost half of the league season. So the fact that they could win the Champions League, of course, was down to they were a very good team, but also I think they were a bit more sharper than the opposition in the games that they played. Like Arsenal, we were still taking the Premier League reasonably seriously. We still had a thin squad. We were playing the league, and then we had to play against them. Even Inter, they were in the title race of Serie A till the last game week, and they were also a bit jaded in the Champions League final. But PSG in these games, they were always quicker to every second ball. And I think that makes a massive difference in these competitions.
I will say, I don't think PSG is the best example, right? Because they're in a situation where they're way stronger than the rest of the league. But I think the City example, I think the bar really should be how worth it is it to have Arsenal players in FPL, because you don't know whether or not they're going to play, right?
Exactly. The key takeaway here, though, is that in these cup competitions, Champions League, you need your players to be fresh. for those
Yeah.
games. That's, I think, the most important thing. Like, you need to manage the squad in such a way you can compete in 4 competitions. It should be the standard.
Yeah, and I don't have the schedule memorized, but imagine if we had a quarterfinal match in the Champions League coming up, and we had to go to Fulham at the weekend before, right? Would you play, Gyökeres and Saka for that, or would you maybe play Havertz and Madueke for Fulham, and then you keep Gyökeres and Saka fresh for the upcoming Champions League quarterfinal match?
Yeah.
I think that is something that Arteta does need to be better at. Again, I have a little bit of sympathy for him from last season, just because he was working with scraps, especially kind of, in the busier part of the season. But yeah, I think that's one thing I don't want to see, where if we're playing a side that we know we're better than, and we have, bigger fish to fry on the immediate horizon, I don't want to see our most important players playing full 90s, right? So, and that includes Odegaard, that includes Saliba. I think Timber and White, you already have a built-in rotation there, so utilize that. But yeah, we're going to have a proper squad this season. So unless we have, the situation like we did last season where we have 15 injuries, I really do hope that we, actually take care of the players and kind of manage their minutes a little bit better. Before we get out of here, there's one thing I wanted to get your thoughts on, which is this Liverpool Isak Ekitike saga, right? So, and you already kind of alluded to this a little bit at the top of the pod, but so Liverpool basically went to Newcastle, and they inquired for Isak, and basically kind of sent this message that either you let us sign Ekitike or we're going to go all out for Isak, which I thought was funny at the time because Isak's off the table, right? But it does look like they're progressing very quickly in signing Ekitike. I guess my question to you is how much better is that for us than Liverpool signing Isak? And just generally, like, what do you make of Liverpool entering the next season? Do you think they're going to be the favorite for the Premier League? Do you think it's going to be more of like a 3-horse race or a 2-horse race? Kind of just what are your thoughts on all that in general?
Yeah, regarding the title race for next season, I think very realistically there could be 4 teams competing for it. I think Arsenal are there, Liverpool are there, City are there, and I think Chelsea, I don't know what to expect from them, but they look really good in this Club World Cup. I know people will say it's a glorified preseason, which it sort of is, but I think they look really good under Maresca even towards the end of last season. So it'd be intriguing to see if they can carry that on and do what we did in 2022-23, where nobody even had us for top 4, but we ended up fighting for the title. So that's something I'm interested to see how it goes. But in terms of Liverpool, I see them being around the same level they were last season. In fact, the last 2 seasons, if you look at it, even the season before last, Klopp hit like 83 points at the end of his last season, and they finished 3rd. And last season, they finished on 84 points. And this is also considering that they were out of the Champions League, I think, already by March. So, and all the other cup competitions as well, if I'm not mistaken. So, pretty much, I think Liverpool will be on a similar level. I see them getting 84 points-ish again this season. I think they will be very good, but I think there is a scope for us to be exceptional and target something above 90 points, And I think it's similar with City as well. Honestly, I'm looking at Man City's team, and if you look at their front 3, I think barring Haaland, I think the rest of the wide players, when you look at the depth there, I think we are actually better than them. You look at the defense, I think we are better. And sort of the midfield as well, because I think our midfield is also really good. I think Rodri is probably better than Zubimendi, but the rest of the midfield, they don't have De Bruyne anymore. So I think it's super even. And when you ask me the question of Isak and Ekitike, I think Ekitike is a really good player. I think he was one of my favorite options for Arsenal this summer. I think he's a very special talent, and I think he can be as good as Isak in a couple of years, depending on how his development goes. But even if Liverpool sign Isak, I'm not going to go on a meltdown because I think we have a very good squad as well. You can't expect to be in the Premier League in 2025 and expect easy competition or a walkthrough. There is then a case of fans saying, why didn't we go for Isak? And I have a very simple answer for that one, which is Newcastle don't want to sell him. Even if there's a minor chance they can sell him, it's not going to be immediate. You're going to pursue this guy the whole window. And look what happened last season. We ended up with a guy called Sterling, a total panic buy in the last minute. You don't want that happening again. When you have guys like Gyökeres who's willingly trying to come to your team, I think Arsenal did the right thing. Sometimes the timing of the transfer is also really, really important. And that's what I think people are missing a bit. And the point you made as well, that maybe Liverpool have fewer requirements than us, so they can go all out for these players, is also very true.
And Liverpool seemed to agree with that, right? Because after they made this big deal about going after Isak, and I think Newcastle would be, how do I put it? Because I saw this in the group text that you and I are both in, where someone raised the point of kind of, based on these recent links to Saudi teams, someone raised the point of maybe Newcastle would sell Isak to a Saudi team and get him a higher salary and then loan him back to Newcastle, right? And that's how they keep him, which sounds crazy, but I don't think that's outside of the realm of possibility. But yeah, I think, after they made this big show about wanting to bid for Isak, they're not spending their summer waiting for him or waiting for that situation to resolve itself, right? They could spend the next month and change trying to unsettle him and trying to talk him into making a stink at Newcastle, and they could sell Darwin and Diaz for 200 million euros and then push that money into Isak. They could do that if they wanted to. But if Newcastle decide that he's not on the table, right? You're looking at a situation where Liverpool could push and push and push, and then it's August 31st at 9 p.m. at night, and they have to go sign Nicholas Jackson from Chelsea for, 80 million pounds or whatever, right? If Nicholas Jackson is available. You see what I'm saying? Liverpool have decided that's not worth their time, and they'd rather go get Ekitike and bed him in during their preseason run and at least have him ready to contribute and not leave themselves in this situation of, not having a good option, right? So, after watching Edu, and you've never been a big Edu fan, and
No.
you know what? In hindsight, I just want to say you look like you were right, because these last couple windows, especially, not the January one, but the two before, right? Edu really left us, hung us out to dry with how he operated, where he'd fixate on one target, and then that target wouldn't want to move, and then Edu wouldn't know what to do until, the final seconds of the transfer window, and he'd sign someone who is shit, if we're being quite honest. So yeah. I'm glad that this summer we've had multiple plates spinning, we've had multiple targets, and then basically, depending on how the chips fell and how things went, we would kind of go after one. We'd decide on a specific targeted position, go after them, and sign the guys who were available when we wanted to get our signings done early. So I think that's going to prove to be the smarter thing. And yeah, maybe we could push for Isak. Maybe Vinny Jr. is available in the window. Maybe we can spend the next month trying to talk Rodrigo into leaving. But those are all risks. And I would rather not take risks at this point. I want to sign the best players who are available right now, and actually go and try to win something this summer and put them on the plane to Asia, and put them on the plane back home for these stupid games that we're playing against our biggest rivals right before the season starts. But I want them there for preseason and bedded in and comfortable, and with chemistry with their teammates, because that is how you win things. You make sure you have the best possible start and not that you're scrounging around in, the first few weeks of the season trying to sign more guys. So yeah, I think we've gone about it very intelligently, and I think Liverpool are also a very intelligent club, and they've gone about this very intelligently. So yeah, there's upsides and downsides to everything you could do in a transfer window, and I think the downsides with our strategy this summer, I'm way more willing to live with.
Yeah, I think Berta's a proper technical director. I think he's one of the best signings we could have made in recent years, really. The speed at which he has moved with the level of decisiveness and clarity is unbelievable. For every position, we have 2 or 3 targets. Sure, we have a top target. We're willing to get anyone out of those 3 targets, and we managed to get it over the line, And this is something really important, getting deals over the line, no matter how you do it. And we're managing to get them over the line. I can't remember the last time Arsenal moved at such speed, It's totally alien for me, because normally we're dragging it. But there's more speed, there's more decisiveness. And I also think Berta is quite a powerful guy at the club, where there are some signings where he's pushing more than even Arteta for us to get over the line. Whereas I didn't see this too much with Edu, I didn't see him having any original targets, or even if he signed someone from Brazil, it would be someone like Marquinhos, who clearly was not what we needed, or someone like Willian. He went to Flamengo, and I thought he's coming back with Bruno Guimaraes, but he comes back with this tall centre back who probably you're faster than. So I'm just like, what is this guy doing, really? But Berta has more, I think, pedigree. I think historically as well, he has more experience in European football. Edu was a guy who came from the Brazilian league. He's never operated at the highest level in his life before he came to Arsenal. Whereas Berta has been there, done that. Some of his top signings include guys like Bonucci, and also at Atletico, he's made a number of top signings. Diego Costa, players like this. So he has a real history, and he knows the European market well. And I think this is what we were missing a bit in the club. Just a guy with that experience who can work with Arteta, and not another rookie working with him. So I'm very happy with this one.
Yeah. No, I think it's been a really great first impression from him, and I think he's really put us in a position where I'm personally really excited for this coming season. I think we've brought in some players who are really going to make a difference for us. So yeah, we'll see what happens. But why don't we put a bow on it here? And I know we've run over the hour mark, but Sash, man, it was so great to talk to you and have you on.
It was so good. Yeah. I didn't even realize that an hour went, to be honest.
Yeah, it just flew. I'm catching a movie with some friends in 45 minutes, and I was just like, oh, I got to get in the car.
Which movie is this?
Superman. I'm gonna go see the new Superman.
Ah, that's cool. Have a good one.
Yeah. Oh, have you seen it yet?
No, I'm not much of a movie person. Usually I might go because my friends might force me to watch some movie, but yeah, not much of a movie guy. I spend my living hours on Arsenal Twitter.
Well, I'll let you know if it's a movie worth letting your friends force you to watch. No, it's yeah. We'll see it. We'll see how that is. But yeah, it was so great to have you on, man. I hope you can come back on soon.
Yeah, I would love to. It was great. Yeah, great stuff.
For sure.
My pleasure.
Well, you guys can follow Sash at LT Arsenal, and you can follow me at Shamsdale. You can follow the pod at Not That Kind of Gooner, Not That Kind Gooner, that's not even it. Follow the pod on Twitter at Not That Gooner. There we go. Not That Gooner. On YouTube, we're Not That Kind of Gooner. On TikTok, we're Not That Kind of Gooner. And on Blue Sky, we're Not That Gooner.bsky.social. So check us out all there. Please do subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you are listening on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts, please do leave us a 5-star review. It really does help push the pod out there for more people to experience it and hopefully enjoy it. So we will be back after the weekend. I'm actually speaking to an Atlanta United fan about Gabriel Heinze. So we'll have a chat there, and then Drew and John hopefully will be back as well. So we'll leave it there. But thank you for listening. Thank you for being here with us. Thank you again to Sash. And
My pleasure.
yeah. So until next time, keep your mind out of the gunner, and we will talk to you soon. So until then, take care, and bye. Bye.
Secret Gooner. All right, I'm a Gooner. No, I love you.
With a minute to go. Here's the businessman here, Santi Cazorla. Saka.